I think we're going to start. Thank you all for being here. Really, it's good to start this morning with you. Tomorrow is a very difficult day as we commemorate 1 year since the tragic day of October 7th, and decided as I was trying to think which way to think about this day, that what I could offer is an opportunity to be in conversation with different activists in Israel that I've been in relationship for some for a very long time, for some of them just this past year, and invite them to be in conversation together. And I'm honored to welcome Rabbi Haviva Ner-David for the first conversation. I'll announce later the other three, Rabbi Avi Davush, Dr. Kochav El-Kayam Levi, and Hanan Al-Sana for the next three ones. But I am very honored to welcome Rabbi Haviva Ner-David, who we have known each other. I was trying to remember, probably for 25 or 27 years now, from Jerusalem. And I've been an admirer of Rabbi Haviva since I met her when I was a rabbinical student, always following her path of fighting the right fight in the best possible ways. I've learned from her so much throughout this there's almost 3 decades we have been in relationship. So I was like, I really want people to hear Rabbi Haviva Ner-David's voice and hear what this year has been for her and her work. I'll introduce her shortly, but we'll hear more about her from her. Rabbi Haviva Ner-David is a rabbi, author, spiritual companion, and activist. She's the founding director of Shmaya, a mikveh for mind, body, and soul on Kibbutz Hannaton, the only mikveh in Israel open to all to immerse as they choose. And the main focus of her activism since moving to the Galilee over 15 years ago, aside from her mikveh work, has been building partnerships among Jewish and Palestinian Israelis to affect social and political change in Israel. And over the past 2 years, this is also including demonstrating tirelessly against the current government. Haviva is an activist with Standing Together, a progressive grassroots movement mobilizing Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel against the occupation and for peace, equality, and social justice. So welcome, Rabbi Haviva from Hannaton. And I would say we had to make a plan. I asked Rabbi Haviva what happens if she gets an alarm during the time that she's meeting, then she needs to run to the safe room, and we'll wait for 10 minutes for her to come back. Hopefully that won't happen in the next hour, but it could happen. So we made a plan, so letting you all know. So Rabbi Haviva, thank you so much for being here.
Well, I can say that I swam already because almost every time I've been in the pool in the past, 2 or 3 weeks, there's been a siren. So maybe that was it for the day. We'll see.
Yes.
Okay.
So before we speak about this past year, I want to ask, because of the current situation, how are you doing after very difficult days, after last Tuesday, after Rosh Hashanah? How are you doing as you live in the Galilee?
Okay, so wait. So first, actually, let me just say a couple of things first that I wanted to remember to say. So one is that, wait, I wrote this down. Okay. So one is that it's hard to have like a memorial or to commemorate a day that feels like it hasn't ended. It's just hard to believe that it's been a year and it's just an ongoing trauma because there's still hostages in Gaza and there's still fighting in Gaza and there's now more fighting in Lebanon, so that's just it's just been ongoing. So that's one thing that's kind of strange about having this Memorial Day. In fact, when people here, sometimes when they write the date, they write also how many days it's been, so it's like, I think today is 366 days maybe, and so they write actually 366, the 366th of October, like that's what people write. So and that feels really, really true. Another thing I wanted to say was that I'm sure I'm going to forget to say things that I want to say because there's so much to say about this year. So I'm already anticipating that I'm going to forget things that I want to say. And the third thing is that I feel like when Rabbi Claudia asked me to speak, I was, well, why me? I don't live in the Gaza envelope, and people, I'm far from where October 7th, where the Hamas attack happened. I mean, far, everything's close here in this country, but far, relatively far. And I'm also far from the northern border of Lebanon, where this whole year there have been rockets and missiles and so many evacuees. So there are all these people, like I have a cousin who's been evacuated since then. And lots of friends. I have friends who have moved like 8 times since they were evacuated. So, well, why me? And then I heard, what you want me to speak about. And so we'll speak about that. But I still felt kind of like humbled. And your next speaker, Rabbi Avi Davush, was there. He lives in the Gaza envelope. And so today I just wanted to share, like this morning, our kids are not in school now because now where I live in the Galilee, there are missiles often, very often, and we have to go to the safe room only when it's a certain distance away from us. So we're also hearing these really loud booms all the time, and we can look out the window and even see the missiles being intercepted, but it doesn't mean that we have to go to the safe room when that happens. It's kind of confusing, especially from my dog, because when my dog hears the booms, she immediately runs to the safe room and she doesn't understand why we're not all running to the safe room too. And we say, well, there's no siren. She hasn't caught on yet. So, but this morning, so my son, who's in high school, they're having Zoom school right now. And so they had a speaker who is, he was his teacher. Now he's retired. And he grew up on Kibbutz Be'eri, which was one of the kibbutzim that was attacked on October 7th in the Gaza envelope. And I'm not sure if they had the most casualties or if it was, Oz, but I think maybe like a third of their kibbutz was killed, perhaps. I'm just throwing that out. I'm not sure if that's the right number, but a very, very large number of people. And so his teacher who grew up there spoke, and I wanted you to hear him. He was just really, so one thing I wanted to say about that was that it's just, first of all, he said that, I'll just share a little bit of what he said. Like he said that he was there for Yom Kippur, like the week before October 7th, visiting family. He doesn't live there. He lives in the north here where we live. And he had been, the first time this ever happened to him, he was walking around and he just felt like he was like a little boy walking around again. He must be, let's see, he was 1966. You can show the picture. He showed us this this picture from when he was a little kid. This is his class. They look like they're in sixth grade, I guess, right? Something like that. And that was 1966. So he grew up there, and he showed this picture, and how each person in the picture, he was like, well, this one was killed, this one's whole family was killed, this one survived, this one was taken hostage, this one saved this person, like every kid in his class, because a lot of them stayed back on the kibbutz. And it was just really very moving and very devastating, to see how like each kid from his grade school class was involved. So that's what it's like, I mean, it's just still very, very alive. And, he talked about, right, that day when he was visiting, and he was kind of, the first time he said this ever happened to him, where he was walking around the kibbutz and just felt like a little boy walking around and like remembering all these things from when he was a little boy, and then a week later he said it was all it was all destroyed. And one other thing he talked about, the funerals, like he talked about when he went right down there after, when it was okay to go there, and he said they were just like burying, like 8 people a day, just every day. So anyway, that was, that was very hard. And at the end, I'll play for you though, he ended on this kind of positive note of he showed us this YouTube video of the people from Beli who after October 7th, they were all moved to, he said the majority were moved to a hotel in the Dead Sea, on the Dead Sea, and some to Tel Aviv, and where else did he say? Somewhere else, in Getty, I think. And then they brought them together for this kulalu. Is that what it's called?
It's kululam, kululam.
Okay, I've never done it, but I've seen videos. So they brought them all together to sing this song together, and we'll show it at the end because it kind of gives a little hopeful note that that they were able to get together and sing. And the words were, I wrote it down. Kol ma shehaya po yishtaneh machar. Everything that happens here will like be different tomorrow. So we'll see that at the end, to end on a more hopeful note. Okay. So and I'll be speaking about some hopeful things too, I hope. Okay. So what did you ask me?
So now the question is, tell us about you. Tell us where you live, about your life,
Okay.
a little bit, so to introduce yourself to the community before we go to more details, things of the work you have done this past year.
Okay. And I was with you last summer. I know that's what also, like, I spoke last summer in your
Yeah, Rabbi Haviva was with us the Friday of the sweating event. She was one of our guests, and we ended up all going outside, if you remember, some of you being called. But yeah, you were a speaker at TVZ on Shabbat in last August. And
yes, so it was only like, what, maybe 6 weeks before all this. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about you, your story, and then how you get from where you come from to become the activist that you have become.
Yeah, and so then I spoke about standing together, but this was before the war. So yeah, so let's see. So I grew up in New York, moved to Israel in my 20s. I was already married and had 2 little kids then. I now have 7, and they're not so little. My youngest is 13 and my oldest is 31. Actually, yeah, you switched the numbers. I just realized that now. And let's see. I am a rabbi, and I call myself a post-denominational interspiritual rabbi. I was ordained by an Orthodox rabbi. I grew up Orthodox, and I studied with an Orthodox rabbi. But then after I was ordained, I left the Orthodox movement, and I call myself post-denominational. I also have interfaith ordination. So that's the interfaith interspiritual ordination, and that could be a whole conversation. All these things could be a whole conversation. But so I also call myself an interspiritual rabbi, and let's see, I run a mikveh on the kibbutz, what we talked about, and you're all welcome to come. And I do a lot of like creative ceremonies. I'm doing something in a couple of days. We're gonna have like a pre-Yom Kippur workshop and vidui writing workshop, and then immersion ceremonies. So I do those kinds of things. I'm a spiritual companion, as you also said, and I work with a lot of just individual clients of all ages and different faiths as well, different faith traditions. But I also work with 4 rabbinical schools in the States doing spiritual companionship for their students. And so over this year, that has actually kept me, like, I'm in Israel and I live here and I have work that I do here, but I also have one foot in the States, specifically in the liberal Jewish community. And and with rabbinical students also. So I've been involved also in all of that. Like I work with also with the RRC, the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, and some of you might have heard of some of the things that went on there. There's like a big anti-Zionist group there. And so that has been a big part of my year also, besides all the stuff going on here and all the work I do here, but also being involved with all of what's going on there, which maybe we'll talk more about. So let's see what else about myself. I'm a writer, and I write fiction and nonfiction. I have, let's see, I'll just show you quickly. I won't show you all my books, but my most recent memoir is this one. Oh, these are from your
Yeah, from the show. Yes.
Dreaming Against the Current is my most recent memoir, and novels, Hope Valley, which maybe I'll mention today because this has to do with what we're talking about, Palestinian and Jewish Jews in the Galilee. To Die in Secret takes place in your part of the world. And this mikveh book, the only children's mikveh book called Yonah and the Mikveh Fish, which you're all welcome to. But anyway, so that's, yeah, what else? Anything else? And my activism. So I've been an activist for a very long time. I'm 55 years old, and I just remember like my bat mitzvah insisting that I want to have a bat mitzvah in the synagogue, even though it was an Orthodox synagogue and no girls had bat mitzvahs in the synagogue. So that's like my first memories of being an activist. But when I first moved to Israel, I was very involved in Women of the Wall. I lived in Jerusalem for 13 years, and that's when we knew each other, when we met. I mean, we still know each other when we first met. Women of the Wall, and I was one of the founders of Shira Chadasha, which was like an Orthodox kind of pushing the boundaries congregation that still exists, and starting this mikveh and all kinds and other things. But when I moved to the Galilee, so in the Galilee, the population is like 50-50 Jewish Arab. And that was different than in Jerusalem. When I lived in Jerusalem, I really felt like much more part of the majority. And I was involved, you know, I sent my kids to something called Kids for Peace, which is like this program meeting with, you know, kids in East Jerusalem, and I did some dialogue and things like that, but I wouldn't say it was definitely not the focus of my activism. My activism was much more focused on feminism, and specifically like religious, you know, Jewish feminism. And when I moved to the Galilee, I started to I made many more friends who were Palestinian and Israeli, and I heard a lot of their stories. And where I lived, there were villages that were destroyed in 1948, and so it's kind of like around me, and I heard stories from friends of mine whose families lived in villages that were destroyed, and like now they're living in Nazareth, but they see where their family's village was, but they can't go there, you know, now it's a Jewish town. So a lot of that I heard, and I guess what I'd say is that I kind of realized that the Zionist narrative that I had grown up on was only part of the story. Like it was definitely true, but there was more information that I hadn't known about. And so that was one thing that pushed me to write the book Hope Valley, that novel. And I was doing like a lot of kind of like talking, and I was in a narrative sharing group, and it was just like, and I had my younger kids, when we moved to Jerusalem. There's an RSC grant. So yeah, sorry, I'm getting distracted by the chat. Okay. What was I saying? A narrative sharing group, and my kids, right? My younger set of kids, when we moved to the Galilee, so they went to a hand-in-hand school, which it's Arab Jewish. It's like a 50-50 population, and they speak Arabic and Hebrew in every class. There's an Arabic speaking teacher and a Hebrew speaking teacher, and they both speak, switching off in class. And so there was also a big community around the school. But at some point, I felt like I needed to turn some of this talking into more like action. And just around that time, I heard about Standing Together, which it was the year, let's see, it was, well, first of all, in 2014, there were different, like what they called mivtzaim, which are like, I don't know, mission, I don't know what the mission, I don't know what to call it, it's aberrations. I think that's what it is, aberrations in Gaza in different summers, and I forget like all the years, but in 2014 there was one, and I remember then feeling very much like that everybody was kind of like retreating into their villages, and there were riots then, and there were lynchings, and there was a lot of violence. And that was when I decided to go to study for this interfaith ministry program, and it was online in New York. It's called a place called One Spirit, because I felt like I needed to, well, actually the truth is that when everyone was having these like retreating into their different places, where I felt most comfortable was when I was coming together with people of of different faiths, and with Arabs and with Jews. And so I realized that I wanted to look more into that, into this, how we can connect rather than what separates us and what makes us different. So then I guess it was maybe 2 summers later, or was it the next summer, there was another operation in Gaza, and then there was also all this violence and rioting, and people then that's when Standing Together started. And we went out onto like street corners, and we would hold signs saying like Arabs and Jews refuse to be enemies, and Arabs and Jews against the violence. And so that's when the organization really started. It's a grassroots organization it's a partnership organization of Palestinian and Jewish Israelis together. And it's an activist organization, so that the idea is that we work together for change. So it's not just talking, although we do that too. We get together very often. There's different circles, what they call different circles around the country. Our circle is Nazareth in the Jezreel Valley. I live in the Jezreel Valley, Hannaton, right? I didn't talk about that. The kibbutz was founded by conservative Jews in the 80s, and now it's not affiliated with the conservative movement anymore. It's more of a it's like liberal Jewish. There's the synagogue is egalitarian, but there's people identify in all different ways on the
Just an interesting connection here. I've been going to Hannaton since it was founded, because one of the founder families was from Chile, made Aliyah, and was family,
right,
friends of my family. So it's been a kibbutz that has been really close to my heart all this year. And every time I go to Israel, I get to visit the kibbutz. And this summer when I was there, I spent Shabbat with Haviva and her family. So it's really a kibbutz where have a lot of connection. One of our TBZ members that is here in the Zoom also is the aunt of Rabbi Yoav and Shira that are here. So there's
I know her.
connection
Hello.
between our TBZ community and the Kibbutz Hannaton. But
Yeah.
not everything is so easy at the kibbutz, right? Tell us about that.
Okay. So wait, so where was I? What was I just saying?
But the kibbutz is a
Standing together. And yeah, so okay. Right, Jezreel Valley, that's where I was. So we're in the chapter of Nazareth in the Jezreel Valley, and we have so many activities. I mean, after this, I have a Zoom with our circle, and let's see. So and so that's where I was already very active in the circle before October 7th. Let me see, let's see if there's something else I wanted to say about that. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, so we do activists, we before the war, we were standing every Friday against the occupation in our area on a specific junction near me. We do we have lectures, we have sharing circles, we what else? All kinds of things. Just that's the idea, is to be activists, to work for social change, but to do it together in partnership. So does that bring me to October in a second? So I can say about that when this government was sworn in, like that first Saturday night afterward, I saw that there was a demonstration in Haifa, and I went. I was very worried about this government. Actually, the summer before the elections, our Standing Together circle in our area, we went out a few days a week, going into a lot of the Arab villages around where we are and trying to get people to come out and vote, because there's low turnout. There's low turnout in general, but especially in the Arab villages. And that's very troubling. And it ended up, what we were worried about happened, and this extremist right-wing government was sworn in. And so I started demonstrating right from the beginning, and Standing Together organized the first big demonstration in Tel Aviv, which a lot of people don't know that. It was it was amazing. I didn't know how many people I got to Tel Aviv, and I was just blown away by the number of people that were there. This is my 13-year-old. Okay, that's Shefa. Her name is Shefa. You can say hi. What?
If I can sellotape.
I don't know where it is. Hi,
Shefa.
So, and I was blown away by how many people came, and then after that Saturday night, there started to be these big demonstrations that were organized by this other group that ended up kind of taking the lead with it. And that's when I assume a lot of you have seen these photographs and everything of the Israeli flag, as is the symbol for these demonstrations. But a lot of us in our Standing Together group, and a lot of specifically my Arab friends, didn't feel comfortable coming so much to these bigger demonstrations that are with all those Israeli flags. And if you want to ask about that, you can, but a lot of them feel uncomfortable with the symbol. That they feel like it doesn't include them because it's, the Jewish star, and not all of them, but a lot of them, and especially feeling like they're in this sea of flags. So we would go to the demonstrations with signs in Arabic and in Hebrew that said things like, there can be no democracy with occupation, or signs about the nation state law, or just anything that was going on that week. These purple signs for our Omdim B'Yachad, our Standing Together group. Actually, I could have worn this shirt, but okay, you'll see in the pictures, I guess. And that's what we would do. We would go to these huge demonstrations. We'd show up though, as a group with our own signs and our own shirts, and to try to and act.
Oops. Did we lose Rabbi Haviva for a moment?
And for whatever reason, maybe it's because maybe it's because I have a dog. I'm not sure, but I have returned time and time again to this just kind of heartbreaking, but also full of hope post that she put up a couple of weeks ago about how her dog responds to the sirens. And it begins saying, "My dog is a very smart dog. She has learned that when there is a siren, she needs to run to the safe room." And she talked, as she referenced today, about times when it's clear from kind of the sound of where the missiles are that they're far enough away that they're not in danger, so they don't need to go into the safe room, but the dog goes into the safe room. She talked about the dog sitting in the safe room and crying for her humans. And for me, there was something so just like heartbreaking about that, clear connection of love and loyalty of the dog in the safe room crying. And she was sort of imagining how her dog just does not understand all of this horror that humans visit upon one another. And then she ended with, a prayer for, a day when we all will live in peace. And, there was just something so deeply human about that. I felt like I wanted to share it with everyone in the world. And there it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith, for sharing. Haviva, you are back, and I just opened it a little bit and share how I've been so inspired by your Facebook post this year, really following everything as you shared. And Edith shared about this post when you shared about your dog. So I was sharing the pictures from your Facebook post. So I think you are back with us. And hopefully we can hear your voice too. You here with us, Haviva? Can you unmute? Okay. Wonderful, thank you. And so, Rabbi Haviva, I'll take you back to where we are, or move us to next, what we just shared. While you were away, I shared how I've been inspiring always, but since October 7th, very much your social media posts, your Facebook posts had given us a telling of your year. And Edith Klein shared about your post a couple of weeks ago of with your dog going to the safe room, and I shared the picture. But can you tell us, why don't we focus now from this past year, since October 7th? What was that day for you? And I know you shared earlier that you were far away, you were not in the South, and in which way this year became a year where you both had to support. You have been in the work of the protests with standing together, also supporting your family. One of your children friends was killed in Gaza, and how you hold all the parts of this past year journey. And is Rabbi Haviva still here?
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
I don't know what's going on with my internet. I'm really sorry about this. All right. So October 7th, is that where we are?
Yeah, October 7th and the year. Yes.
Okay. So October 7th, I was home, and it was Simchat Torah morning, and I don't know why exactly. I looked at my phone to see what the news was. I really don't remember why. I think just the times were kind of tense times in general or something. And so it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I looked at my phone and saw that we were at war. And I said to Jacob, my partner, we're at war. And he was like, what are you talking about? I said, well, the Hamas attacked from the south, from the border. And it was like the reports were coming in like 10 people, 20 people, and it was unclear, what the magnitude of it was. And this was early in the morning. And just like slowly it was more and more, and I was just kept looking, and Jacob decided to go to shul, to synagogue, to the services, and I said, I'm staying home. I'm glued to what's going on. And we had kids up for, like, our older kids were visiting, some of them, not all of them. And I was just, like, it just kept being more and more people, and it kept growing. And I had one son who was in Egypt at the time on a trip, because usually he's in university, and university starts after the holidays are over. So he was going to be coming back soon, and he had taken a bus to Egypt, and he was like backpacking in Egypt. And so he wrote to me, like, something's going on. And I said, yeah, something's going on. You got to get home. But you can't take the bus home. anymore. That was too dangerous. And he said all the flights were Israelis who were trying to get back to serve, and they were being called up for the reserves, and he wasn't, because when he was in the army, he tore his meniscus during training, and so he had many surgeries, and he doesn't serve in the reserve. So he didn't want to take a seat from someone who needed to go back to serve. And so in the end, I got him a ticket that day to go to Greece and at least get out of Egypt. And luckily we did, because like right after he left, there were some Israeli tourists killed right where he was in right now I can't remember which city, Alexandria. So I wasn't being just a worried mother. That was him. He went to Egypt. He went to Greece, and then he hung out there for a little bit, and then we got him a ticket to Barcelona, which our 16, and now he's our 17-year-old. He was 16 at the time, was supposed to be spending the year in soccer academy. And so we said to our son, the older son, go visit him, because he's very upset about what's going on. And he would really like to have your company. So that son went, we got him a ticket to go to Barcelona to visit the younger son. And in the end, the younger son decided to come home. He said he couldn't be so far away when all this was going on. So he gave up his year of soccer academy and came home and rejoined his class. And he has since dropped out of soccer completely. His whole his priorities have changed, and now he wants to go to the army and this and that, and that's a whole other story, because he got his call up already in a year now. He'll be called up when he's 18, so they start sending things before. I didn't say actually the day before. Okay, so this was October 7th. October 6th, our Standing Together Circle had a beautiful picnic the day before. On Friday, October 6th, we had a wonderful picnic, and we were all singing together, and it was felt really just so beautiful and hopeful. And we were singing, in Arabic songs and Hebrew songs, and playing, all different kinds of instruments, and eating all different kinds of food. And it was just really wonderful. And then it was just crazy. Like the next morning, this happened. Let's see what else. My daughter's boyfriend was up visiting with us too then, and he got on the first bus he could get going back to Jerusalem, because his cousin, who was a soldier, was killed already that first day. So he went to go to the funeral. I personally knew two hostages, Hirsch Goldberg-Palin and Vivian Silver, although it turned out she wasn't a hostage. We thought she was a hostage for I guess it was like 6 weeks or so, maybe. And then it turned out that that she was killed in her house, that her house was burnt, and her body was so destroyed, decimated, that they didn't find it. But they were able to later, like 6 weeks later, from bone, through a bone that they found, they were able to tell that it was hers.
Can you tell us a little bit about who Vivian Silver was?
Of course, yes.
Knew her, but not everyone, so I don't want to assume.
Yeah, the reason why I know her is because she was one of the founders of Women Wage Peace, and she's a peace activist. She was a peace activist, and she was Canadian, so there's like the Anglo peace activist people kind of know each other. And since then, her son Yonatan has kind of taken her lead, or he was not involved in peace activism before, and since she was killed, he's decided to kind of take over for her, not with Women Wage Peace necessarily, but his own work. And let's see, So there was actually an article about him in the New York Times. I think it was maybe last week or something, if you look for it. So let's see, I'm thinking what else, October 7th, what else happened for me? Just going to that part of my.
Tell us about, I know Nahum lost a dear friend.
Yeah, so I have a son who's now, I guess he's 20, but yeah, or then he was 2, and he didn't do the army because I have a genetic muscular disease that some of my kids have, and he has it. So he did national service instead. But all his good friends are still in the army, were in the army at this time, and were in Gaza. And so 2 of his friends were killed. And which is one reason why I think that my 17-year-old now has just become very like gung-ho. He wants to be in the army because he knew them too, and he was really very upset about it, about them being killed. And my son's best friend was wounded very seriously, and it's crazy. Like he was shot in the leg, and he had surgery on his leg, and he's been in rehab ever since. But actually, it was like in some ways a relief because he got out of Gaza, and at least we knew that he was alive and safe. So that's kind of a crazy way to
So this
think. But
picture is the cover of Nahum's friend. Can you
his friend, yeah.
and what's his name so we can lift up his name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I mean, I have so many. I could read you this poem I wrote, but I guess I'll say that I want to get to I see that we're getting really close to. Okay, I want to say that with our Standing Together group. So what happened was at the beginning, like that day, or even, that was Shabbat, right? So right after that night, we were already on a Zoom, like a national Zoom of the whole organization, the whole movement, to try to prevent the kind of rioting and violence that happened when we had these operations in Gaza. And so people all over the country were building these smaller groups that we called like solidarity groups to just try to prevent violence from happening. And actually it didn't this time. There were no rioting, and Hamas were even saying, like I remember that first day they were calling upon the Israeli Arabs to rise up, but they didn't. And actually politicians, Arab Israeli politicians, were condemning October 7th. And in our group, one little kind of interesting thing that happened was that we had this WhatsApp group, and our group stayed together. There were some other Palestinian Israeli groups that kind of fell apart or had a lot of challenges and maybe came back together, but that was a very challenging time. But our group actually stayed together the whole time. We've even doubled in size since then. So I think we have close to maybe 600 people in the group. But there's people who are more active, people who are less active. But an interesting thing was that like we didn't hear voices from Palestinian Israelis in our group jumping out and condemning what was going on. And I was a little stunned by that, because whenever something would happen, like in the territories, when there was violence, when the government did something that we found unacceptable to Arabs, or the Jews in the group were always like very, very quick to say, oh my gosh, what a horrible thing. It's so terrible, not in my name. And this didn't happen, right? On October 7th. And some of us, started to like, why are you so quiet? And I went to there are 2 founders of our circle, one Palestinian Israeli, one Jewish Israeli, and went to him and said, like, you need to write something condemning. And he was like, oh, but isn't it just assumed? Of course I condemn it. And I said, no, you don't understand. You need to come and say something, because it's just like how we do, and what we understood was that a lot of it was like such a switch. People later, they said, oh, we were just so shocked by the whole thing. We didn't know what to do. And I think a lot of them were used to being like the victim and not used to being in the place of having to say that they condemned what was happening. And so that was a learning.
I find this very powerful, and I think that there is a parallel of some of the experience that some of us had here in the States, where I also went to, these were not necessarily Palestinian, but friends of mine, Jewish friends, or especially Muslim friends, where I was like, why are you not condemning this publicly? I'm like, because it's obvious. And I remember, because I have close relationship with these friends, saying to them, okay, it is not obvious to all, you need to be able to say it. And I think that to realize that both for when we think about ourselves, things that are obvious are not so obvious. And when we think that other people, like that, I learned from that moment that things that I take for granted, that people know that I think or I believe are obvious, I have to say them out loud. And then also remind the people that I'm in relationship that they need to also stand up. And I think that is an incredible learning, which can only happen in relationship. You could go to this person and say, I need you to say it because you were in a relationship, and they could hear it from you. And I think that's, it's very powerful and something we can learn from this horrible experience.
And actually, interesting, now you're saying that, I realized that, and then it kind of turned the other way very quickly, how, where, so then a lot of them would say, oh, well, the fact that you need me to say that I condemn it means that you don't understand, like, where I'm coming from. You don't understand that, that like, the fact that you would even think that I don't condemn it is, and so, and also what was going on here very soon after October 7th was a lot, and it's still happening, is like, if a Palestinian Israeli posted something, let's say on Facebook, saying that they condemn the war, or even if they just said like they sympathize with the Gaza, sometimes they could lose their job. Sometimes they were even arrested and like taken in for questioning, and then in the end they were let free. But it's this whole, like, it was a scare tactic that this government was using and is still using sometimes. And so it's that's something else actually that Standing Together did, is we created a hotline if people are experiencing some kind of discrimination or violence, that they could call the hotline. So that's another thing we did. We did so many things. We started the beginning, we also like, we went to deliver flowers in the hospitals all went underground right from the beginning on October 7th. And one of them in Nahariya, like the ones in the north. And so we went and we were delivering flowers in the hospital. So that was a really, really special day. This is just some of us. And we painted signs together saying things like, what is good neighbors even in hard times. So we painted these big signs together, and then we hung them like between our villages. Let's see.
The signs in this picture that I'm showing, that they say in Hebrew and in Arabic, "Na'avor et ze biyachad," means we will go through this together. So you have Israeli Jews and Palestinian Israelis saying, we are in this together, which is very, very powerful to see. And definitely to know that this happened really not a short time after October 7th. There was already people, and Haviva, one of them, doing this wonderful important work.
And there's one woman, you'll see her, there are two women wearing black like head coverings, but the one with the one that's like coming down, yeah, so she's my friend Tahani, and she lives in the Arab village across from our kibbutz called Kufr Manda. She's a really good friend of mine, and she on October 7th, she sent me a message on WhatsApp saying, if you feel in danger, my home is your home. and you can come bring your family, stay with me. So that was, she's very special. And then I said to her, likewise, obviously. So that was, she got it, from the beginning. And I think one reason why is because we had this very special moment before October 7th, when we had a sharing circle once, and I said something about how I feel like some of my activism in creating partnership is also to kind of right or wrong, to do a tikkun, like a repair on what happened in 1948 from both ends, not just what Jews did to Palestinians, but the whole story, the Arabs attacking when Israel declared its state, just that's part of what my novel Hope Valley is about also, because it has a backstory in 1948. I feel strongly that, and this is part of my vision, is that now we need to work together to create peace and to share the land, that we weren't able to do it then, but maybe now, we can have another chance. And actually, so I'll say that October 7th, like I felt like it was such a crisis, and is still, and I had this kind of hope that out of such a crisis, maybe we'll have some kind of, maybe you need a big crisis to create some big change. And I really, at the beginning, I really did feel that was what was going to happen. And I had, high hopes, because I felt like Biden was going to pressure Netanyahu to create to create a Palestinian state, to agree to a two-state solution, something. And at the beginning, even, I guess I wasn't, well, none of us were really demonstrating against the war yet, anyway, at the beginning. And then I could say on a personal level, I started to see that we weren't, that the war wasn't leading toward any kind of vision of something, any kind of vision of peace. And so then I started to demonstrate, and our Standing Together started to demonstrate for a ceasefire, but a ceasefire different than maybe the kind of slogans that you were hearing there, which disturbed me from the beginning when I saw people demonstrating for a ceasefire like on October 8th. And more like a hostage ceasefire agreement, to return the hostages, to stop fighting, to figure out some kind of political solution. And that's still my vision, and I'm still demonstrating often, very often. But it's just feeling, now that war has escalated, now it's also here. So it's now, I mean, we were having sirens back then, and missiles too. I remember I was doing a Zoom, it was very soon after, I think it was like a month of the something from October 7th, and I had to get called to the safe room. And actually it's like the first few, maybe it was like 5 days after October 7th, I started a course in thanatology, which is the study of death and dying. I had signed up for it that summer, not knowing what I was going to be facing, and it was just on target. And it was starting just like a few days after October 7th, and I didn't think I would get to stay awake for the first class, which was at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was online in the States. And I thought I would just listen to the recording. And then we had a siren, so I was up already. And when we came out of the safe room, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, just when they were starting the course. So I got on, and I was on, and I had this really cathartic moment where they showed this video of a man who was dying of Lou Gehrig's disease, and he ALS, and he knew, he like decided when he felt that he was ready to go, that he was going to stop eating. And he kind of planned his whole last couple of weeks, and he planned his funeral, and it was a beautiful, it was a video, like his wife videotaped from that time till his funeral, and videotaped the funeral. And I was just weeping in front of the screen. And I understood why. After it was over, I shared with the group that because I had spent the past bunch of days just watching, reading and watching all these stories of all these people who had such tragic, horrible, brutal deaths. And then I was watching this beautiful death that he was like able to orchestrate and how he wanted it. And it was just so hard to see the stark, difference of how all these other people had seen had their final moments. So that was also around October 7th. And I'm part of a group called Spirit of the Galilee, which is interfaith. It's an interfaith group, different clergy from different faiths who live in the Galilee. And the whole first few days after October 7th, I tried to post, I've been trying to post on Facebook a lot of the Arab Jewish kind of stuff going on and to give people hope and to show what is happening behind the headlines and all of that. And those first few days, nothing came out. And then we had this Spirit of the Galilee group meeting, which we were supposed to be having in person, and it was online instead. And we were all just sharing. And when I finished that, I felt inspired to write an interfaith prayer for peace. And that was the first thing I wrote after October 7th. So I think that inspires me, is being in these kinds of circles and groups where we're all working together. And I can share, and people need to go, I can share that I guess something hopeful, that now I've come to this kind of feeling, even though things do sometimes I feel myself moving to despair because things just seems to be getting worse all the time. But I feel like my work is a few different things. One is to hold on to this hopeful vision and to, not to let it go, because if we let it go, then it really won't happen. And if we can hold on to the vision and keep it alive, even if it's in a minority, or if we're the people who believe in the vision are not the ones who have the power right now, just to keep it alive so that when the time comes, that we can make it happen, that it'll be there. It'll be in the public, in the discourse, in the consciousness. And another thing that I realized over the past year is that my place is to hold these different truths, to hold the Palestinian narrative, to hold the Jewish narrative, and to hold the humanity of everyone. And to remind, I'm in some spaces, I feel like I need to remind them of Jewish humanity. I'm in other spaces, I need to remind them sometimes of Palestinian humanity, and to just tell people that they don't need to choose sides. I mean, that's one thing that I feel very strongly, that you don't have to be anti-Israel to be pro-Palestinian. You don't need to be anti-Palestinian to be pro-Israel, that we can just be pro-humanity and pro-peace. And that's something that, that I feel very strongly about, and I still do. And something also that that I saw happening abroad, outside of Israel, that I found disturbing, was this feeling that people felt that they needed to choose sides. And I would say, well, no, help us who are trying to create peace here. You don't have, don't be against Israel and don't be against Palestinians, to be for all of us making, living together in peace. That's what we need. So yeah, I mean, there's more, I'm sure.
Thank you. I really wanted to ask you to talk about that, about really very much that these two roles that you're playing, and the way you said it to me is really an activist against you're an activist against the government right now, and about their policies, but defending Israel, and how that as an Israeli you do that, and see when you are in progressive circles, how you are able to say that, and hopefully we can hear that, because the true work that we need to push is against the dehumanizing both sides, and how hard has been this polarization in this past year that you have experienced, not only there but also seeing it from here, from the States, and how that is not helpful for anyone. So really, I wanted, you just said a little bit about that, but if you want to add more on that. And the other question I want to ask you, if it's kind of related, you talked about living in the kibbutz, and I know we'll finish in a few minutes. I know because of the technical issues, we'll go a little over, but not too over. About one of the residents of your kibbutz. You can share about that experience. I think it's something that people are not familiar. So
Okay. And when we end, I want you to just put on that video, because that was really.
I'll have it ready. I'll have it ready. Yes.
So I feel lucky that I live in Israel, as ironic as that sounds, because it's a very, very, very hard place to be right now. But that I can go out and demonstrate against the government and not feel that guilty. Like I feel that here, that's my role. And I think it's harder for people sometimes in the States or all over Europe too, to say things against the government, because they don't want to jeopardize support, I guess, for Israel. And so I think it's really important. I do think it's important to criticize this government, but I think it's important to make it clear that you're not criticizing. You're not saying Israel has no right to exist, but just criticizing this particular government and some of its policies. So, and I find that line is crossed often outside of Israel, and I feel that it's clear, I'm here, I'm living here. Obviously, I think we have a right to exist, but I do think that this government is really leading us into a very, very bad place, and I'm very, very concerned about our future here. Not just because of the government, also because of Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas and all of that. But I feel like this government has not handled it well, to say the least. So let's see. You said you want to be about
talking about the government. Talk about
speaking about the government, right? So one of my neighbors is a minister in the government. His name is Amichai Shikli, and he is the Minister of Diaspora Affairs, and he's a member of our kibbutz, and he's in the government. And so a bunch of us on the kibbutz have been demonstrating in front of his house, and that has caused some friction on the kibbutz. I don't want to say that our demonstrating has caused the friction. I think his being in the kibbutz maybe has caused the friction, and I don't think even that it needs to cause friction. I mean, I think that we all just have a right to demonstrate, and that people should just respect that. But a lot of people have trouble with the fact that we do demonstrations in front of his house. So, and I think he should respect that too, and just he could even come out and talk to us, but he never does. And so that's been an issue in the kibbutz. It's never boring here, as you know, Claudia. It's for a little tiny place, it has a lot of action. So so yeah, we continue to demonstrate, and even now, like last night, I was out demonstrating in Caesarea, which is where a different person in the government lives, the Prime Minister Netanyahu. So I demonstrate in a lot of different places in Haifa. Now there's no demonstrations north Haifa and north of Haifa. There's no school, there's no demonstration. So this is in Caesarea. This is a rabbi friend of mine, Amy Klein, who went to the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, and we're sitting in Caesarea, blocking the road. That's us sitting on the road in Caesarea.
This is last night, by the way. This is last night,
This
right?
is last night after Shabbat, after Rosh Hashanah and Shabbat ended. So this is a lot of my life right now, is demonstrating. And yeah, we didn't have a siren at least, so that was good.
That's good though. I get the rocket alert, a red alert on my phone, and I see there's one not far from you in Meron. So hopefully
Oh, really?
God again, that too close to you. I just want to thank you and everyone. We'll finish with a video. I don't know if you want to say anything about the video, and maybe after the video, say a few last words, Rabbi Haviva. What do you say?
Okay. Should you want to watch it first, and then I'll look and see if there's anything I forgot to say,
Yeah.
or do you want me to just look quick? I did say one. I did do something. I'm sorry about Vivian's funeral. That was for me a turning point too, where I wrote. Maybe you can share this poem that I wrote if you want with them later. But you know, when she was killed, it was very hard. I mean, she was a peace activist. A lot of peace activists were killed on October 7th, because that part of the Gaza envelope did tend to have a lot of people who were active for peace. And when she was killed, you know, just like the thought of someone who had dedicated her life to making peace with her neighbors, you know, across the border fence. I mean, she had activities with them. She organized a bike ride, like on both sides of the border, and she had friends in Gaza that she spoke to, and who knows if even some of those contacts. I mean, they said that the people who came in, the Hamas people who came in, had like maps of some of the houses. So who knows? It was really, really, really hard. And but then when I went to her funeral, people who spoke were saying, you know, that we need to continue her work. Like I said, her son is doing, and people who were very close with her said that's what she would want us to do. And there were then, at the end of the funeral, a bunch of people from Women Wage Peace stood in a circle and started singing songs of peace. And so for me, that filled me up with like, yes, we need to continue this work, even though it's really, really hard. And so I really do believe that we just need to believe in it, and we need to hope. We can't give up hope, because the alternative is just too hard, too awful to imagine that there's no hope. So we have to have hope. And this video, so I'll tell you, it's this teacher who spoke today on Zoom to the kids. So this was the Kulalum, is that
Kululam.
Kululam from Be'eri. And so, as I said, the line that they're saying, actually there's I think there's
subtitles. There is subtitles. So
yeah, so you can watch it. And I noticed when I was watching it that you don't see people crying.
yeah,
Like,
I
I was crying when I was watching it. I was crying, but the people are like uplifted and smiling, and that left me with a good hopeful feeling. Not that there's anything wrong with crying. Crying's great, but I did that. I noted that.
So I'm going to share the video now. I did put Rabbi Haviva's poem on the chat. I had to divide it in two pieces because there's a limit of words in the chat. So you can read it there, and I can share it later also to people. So let me put the video, and we'll finish with that and some just last words. everything that will change tomorrow. It's just so powerful when you see people from this kibbutzim that a year ago went through such a terrible, horrible atrocity, being able to come together and sing in this way. So I'm grateful to be ending with this video. Rabbi Haviva, grateful to your leadership, to your activism, to your not giving up even when it's just so incredibly difficult. So I just want to thank you all. Thank you, Rabbi Haviva, for being here. I have 2 announcements. One is we'll do this in 2 weeks again with Rabbi Avi Dabush, who was in Kibbutz Nirim, one of the kibbutzim, and survived this horrible day and has been a leader and a voice. And other things, and I'll send this to our community in a little bit, is that tomorrow, I'll be participating in a commemoration of October 7th. It's throughout the Rabbinic Call for Human Rabbis at 2:30 p.m. online. And if you want to join, Rabbi Haviva, any last words before we conclude? But you have to unmute for that, for sure.
I was too busy watching to look through my notes. I was captivated by that again. I don't know. I think that what can I say? We just need to, I guess that video says, I mean, just to not give up hope, to keep working, to keep and actually maybe one thing I didn't say that made that video made me think of is how I still very much feel that the people here in this country, you know, are just very, very inspiring. The resilience, the caring for each other, that happened, you know, October 7th, that immediately people, I didn't say this, there were people who came from the north who, like every empty place in our kibbutz was refilled with people who needed shelter, and this happened all over the country. And a friend of mine who lived in the Gaza envelope, somebody just gave her a house in Herzliya that she didn't know, and just like she moved in with her family, and that just happened all over. And we also had a group of Eritreans, is that how you say, who were refugees living in Israel, who had nowhere to go, and they were living in Sderot, and so they were living in our educational center for a few months at the beginning of the war. So that was, you know, and people just came out to help in such a big way, picking vegetables and fruit, and doing activities for kids, and social workers going down to these hotels and working with, and psychologists working with the people, just so much volunteer stuff going on. And so that was just beautiful, beautiful to see. And so that is one big like superpower of this country, even with all the terrible stuff that's going on now. And I still feel it very much, just that there's such great people here. So hopefully we'll be able to rise from this. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
I think, you know, it's a beautiful way to end. It's like how we hold both. We hold both the resilience, the beauty of the people, the generosity of the people, and the terrible decisions that are made and the horrible things that happen, and know that we have to just keep pushing to see what can become better. So thank you, Rabbi Haviva Ner-David. Thank you, everybody, for joining this Sunday morning. I posted the link of the YouTube on the chat. Share it. And thank you all for being here. And may we see peace soon. Thank you all.
Yeah. Pray for us. Yeah.
Do that. Thank you.